and I'm always keen to hear what's happening on the ground for learning purposes. As introduced by Chris and also by Edwin, we work as a national advocacy institution with a little bit of county implementation experience. So really, we call ourselves practitioners of social accountability, but our implementation experience would not be as rich as the rest of the team here. So it's an honor to be here and to look forward to this sharing experience. So we work at national level, and our work is very much tied to the constitution implementation process, because we started implementing CDF social audits just before the constitution review process. And we were then able to be part of this second liberation by taking the lessons we had learned in the social audit and putting them in through the petition process into the constitution making process and into the devolution laws. And so I'll share our experience from that point of view. Social accountability means different things to different people. There's no universal understanding simply because it's a new field of practice. Social accountability can be implemented very technically. It can also be implemented very politically. It can be implemented by government or within government structures. It can be implemented by citizens. But the main thing it seeks to do is to close the power distance between leaders and citizens. It seeks to create accountability, answerability of leaders to citizens. So it's central to the democratization process, democratizing resources, decision-making, access to services. Social accountability is key to that. In that regard, we promote social accountability through policy advocacy. We use also policy advocacy at national and county level. We use public interest litigation. At implementation level, we have used social audits, procurement audits, budget monitoring, open contracting. And I will share 3 examples that can maybe give some reflections, because we have a short period of time. And I felt maybe if I speak to 3 examples of our work, I can then give the reflections in terms of what our thinking is, our emerging thinking around social accountability. So the first has to be about our experience with CDF, where we started, because we started out doing CDF social audits together with SEGG, which Paul Masese is representing. And at that time, our thinking was, if we can implement social audits, we can push for accountability of members of parliament, because they were the ones managing these funds. This was our thinking. We didn't really have a theory of change. We really, we understood the law. We had a social audit tool, I think a very good tool. And we had a funder who was willing to support this program. And so we went out and we did quite a lot of social audits and of the CDF. And we had, actually at that point, MPs were shaking. When they heard of CDF, they used to shake, because information would be collected and members of parliament would be called by communities to public meetings to answer questions. And that was exposing them. And what we began to see was, of course, projects that had stalled would be completed, maybe a little bit of improvement to access to information, but we also began to see other things, such as, because these are politicians, because they have legislative making power, when cornered, they would go and change the law and say, oh, we have improved the law. So every time we were trying to corner MPs to tell them, you should not be the one implementing this money. This money should be implemented by communities. They changed the law. They were always one step ahead. The other thing that we saw is that our efforts were improving the performance of the CDF. communities were getting an increasing role through the project committees, through the constituency fund committees. So we were in this tug of war when the constitution review came around, and we then decided in conjunction with SEDGG and other partners, we were calling ourselves the Social Audit Learning Group. We decided, let's do an evaluation of the impact of our work. And we found our work was impactful, it was strong, but it wasn't sustainable. We also found that we were coming in to do social audits, but when we met communities, communities had other questions. Like we tell them, we are here for social audit, we are going to train you. Then they say, yes, but we are not, apart from social audit, we are interested in access to water. We are interested, so they brought up service delivery questions, which were not part of our initial tool. So our reflection was, to work with citizens, you need to be involved in the entire planning process. And we therefore went around and trained ourselves on the budget. I believe we had at least 2 training sessions where we were trying to understand, okay, how do we put social audits inside this budget process? And I'll then speak to that. But the lessons coming out, what I would say, the reflections from our experience implementing social audits in the CDF, Constituency Development Fund, was that social audits were effective in opening up the civic space. But in the case of CDF, because of the role of the Member of Parliament, we were not able to dislodge, to get what we call a proper separation of powers, and we then went to court on that. But there are other lessons coming out of here. These lessons, we picked these lessons and we compiled them, and through the process of preparation of the devolution laws, we were able to influence the laws, the 5 devolution laws. We took the lessons on public participation, access to information, organizing communities, rights of communities. And if you look at the devolution laws, they have a lot of those provisions. And I would say those provisions are the fruit of our work. We sat around the table and we tried to envisage, what does this active participation and accountability look like? And we made those proposals and they were taken up. We as an institution have then spent the period after the 2013 trying to advocate for the operationalization of public participation, social accountability. And this is where I can say that where you have leadership that has embraced social accountability, you have good results. But where you have leaders who are steeped in the old thinking, centralized thinking, elite thinking, then public participation doesn't work. So we are seeing that public participation frameworks haven't been operationalized, village structures haven't been operationalized, project committees are not operational, county budget economic forums are not operational. So we can say that in many counties, majority of counties, the power has not shifted. In a few they have, but the shift that we seek to see where decisions and the power is more with the people has not happened. And so the lessons that come out here is that social accountability works better with the right political leaders. So if we are going to take forward this work, we also have to pay attention to how do we ensure how do we ensure we get good political leaders. Then the other thing is that with the closing of the civic space, especially under the Jubilee administration, which has taken an approach that is very hostile to accountability, hostile to devolution, citizens have then gone back into a cocoon of fear. And we need to think, how do you implement social accountability when the civic space is closing? How do we re-energize citizens? Because we expected political actors to open the space for us, but they're not opening, because if they open, they will lose the power. And yet citizens are, in many cases, afraid. Even our approaches are very much aligned to working with these institutions. So how do we change the kind of education we are doing and the way we implement social accountability for more activism approach, use of non-violent approaches in social accountability? Because
you have 3 more minutes on this session to go. Thanks.
Right. We then had another program, the Integrated Solid Waste Management Program, where we started out with a social audit in Nairobi. And after we had done this work and we were working with young people, it quickly emerged to us that the barrier to social accountability was the way solid waste was structured and the lack of opportunities. We therefore identified that by engaging communities within service delivery, we could use opportunities in the service delivery framework, both to enforce social accountability and to create livelihoods. Now, this kind of process takes time. This kind of process also has technical complexity because it means you have to work at the policy level, you have to work at capacity building the youth themselves, you have to work at maybe legal reforms to push the government, you have to still do the procurement monitoring. So social accountability programs can't rely on just one tool. They have to be context responsive, and they need to be layered to work with the different aspects of service delivery. So in that way, social accountability actually need to be put in kind of development programs that also have the advocacy side. The last example I'll use is Nairobi County, where we've worked for quite a long time supporting the County Budget Economic Forum and on public participation. We were successful in getting the CBEF established and a very vibrant CBEF. We were successful in getting a Public Participation Act enacted. And with very, very good practices, we engaged with a lot of amazing citizens who are able to organize themselves into ward development groups, resident associations. We were able to work with government leaders, government officials who are very open. But social accountability fell by the way of bad leadership. And as you're aware right now, Nairobi actually is being re-centralized. And some of the communities we were working with, informal traders, are really being harassed by GSU to pay an illegal market tax. And this is, and there are conflict of interest, violation of the constitution, violation of the law, so many violations. So what I wish to say as I close is that social accountability is indeed powerful. But when you have a political leadership that is opposed to the value foundations of social accountability from democratization, constitutionalism, public participation, legal compliance, then we need to sit down and think again. And I would say that we've lost some major gains that we were on the path to having. And we need to move out of this appeasement space where we are saying if we are nice to government, they'll give us. We need to go back into the political strategies, and institutions like ourselves might not be that strong on political strategies, but we need to come together, stop the fragmentation of programs, and really look at how do we reclaim the space we are losing. Otherwise, we will not only lose the citizen space, we will also lose devolution. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wanjiru. Maybe a follow-up question is that in the post-COVID era, we are realizing that social distancing is being used, and public meetings are being outlawed. Don't you think it's also to negate the gains you have had in the issues of accountability and democracy? The government might be using it the way they are being used to settle political scores. To what extent do you think civil society can put their voices so that the space, as much as we have a COVID, the space remain widened so that we can continue engaging with the citizens? Then two, don't you think we can also now innovate and as civil society try to use technology more and focus more on young people to build movement on social accountability using technology? Maybe your tech, and before I invite others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I can see the direction you want to take this, which is, I think, the right one. With regard to the civic space, we are fortunate at this point to be concluding a study we undertook for Danida, looking at social accountability and the way it's being implemented across by different actors in the country, and we were able to sample a few. And what we found was some counties have been very proactive and are using technology proactively, so that the civic space can be said not to have closed where you have a government that is aligned to the principle of participatory inclusive governance. But of course, where government was tokenistic, they will use this to close. So I believe what you've said is the right way to go. If we can use maybe even the outputs of this forum to come together with a joint comprehensive statement that can really speak to the issue, and maybe we can pinpoint some areas that are in trouble, and also get examples of counties that have really embraced COVID and are doing the right thing. In terms of innovation, I agree. COVID presents opportunities for us. One, as civil society, we need to step up to the challenge, use technology ourselves, and yes, get the youth on board. And there are also other opportunities around COVID, such as you've noticed that government has recognized you need to deepen health systems. So anybody who's got a health program, this is a fantastic time for your program to push for government to institutionalize the spending that they are taking right down to the dispensary level. So maybe, again, social accountability actors need to do a review of what are these opportunities that are before us, so that we can also rise to the occasion, because it seems we will not go back to the normal kind of engagement for another long time to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Wanjiru. Maybe at this juncture, I will want to invite Masese, but before I invite Masese, I will start by a question to Masese. Masese, one of the questions that have been raised here is that what is your clear definition of social responsibility, and how far has devolution departed from it? This has been raised by a participant in the plenary. Please take it from there, as you also tell us what are the tools from your experience, these tools that we have been using in social accountability. To what extent are they giving us the outcome? That is it the outcome that we desire, or they are sort of it? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. And again, thanks, Conrad, for organizing this forum. I think Wanjiru has given us very deep insights, even taking us back to history. By the way, Wanjiru, Suleiman Seif Kajembe died. Is the first MP who allowed his CDF to be subjected to social audit. Was the guinea pig, if you recall, way back in 2007. May his soul rest in eternal peace. I think I will start with the question that has been raised by the participant. And I first agree with what Wanjiru said, that it's probably not possible to have one sentence defining social accountability because of the multiplicity of approaches. But then the World Bank has tried to give us a definition that we have taken up as the working definition. That social accountability is accountability that relies on civic engagement. And what that means precisely is what Wanjiru said, that the kind of accountability that is based on citizen demand and citizen actions, engagement between citizens and the elected leaders and government institutions. So any kind of conversation, any kind of engagement that happens, be it between an elected leader, a ministry, a department, a service delivery unit, that can qualify, can pass as social accountability. So the key words for whoever is interested in the specifics of the definition is that one, it must be citizen-led. It's the people seeking to hold the people to whom they've delegated the power authority. I think from Z to G, we've taken to defining social accountability as mechanisms that citizens use to utilize their sovereign powers. I think it's actualization of Article 1 of the Constitution of Kenya. To us, that's what we call social accountability. So whatever citizens do to exercise their sovereign powers, and I think that should sink, is what would constitute. But then as Wanjiru went further to define, is that sometimes social accountability can be initiated by government itself. That the government on its own volition can seek out to engage and to consult with citizens. And indeed, all these are demands of a constitution and other laws that give effect to the constitution. Now, Chris, if you allow me, because I think the second question you asked is in the second session of this conversation, I would just want to weigh in on some of the very important insights that Wanjira shared. And to me, I would cluster them as preconditions for effective social accountability. I think what Wanjira has delved into is the need for an enabling political environment. That's a critical lesson that we've picked along the way, that social accountability initiatives will become successful and sustainable if the political environment is enabling. And therefore, the linkage between the people we elect and the services they are supposed to provide. Closely linked to that, which is very important in my view, is unfettered access to information. Social accountability relies on information, relies on evidence, and that's when it will be objective and avoid conflict between the people and their leaders. So if information is not accessible, then it makes it difficult. The third precondition is an organized and informed citizenry. The people must be knowledgeable about their rights and responsibilities, about the laws, roles, and responsibilities of different ministries, departments, and agencies. What that means is that if you expect people to hold leaders to account, they must be clear about the roles and responsibilities of those leaders so that they are able to ask the right questions at the right time. The fourth precondition is a united, better coordinated civil society. I think there's a thin line between civic engagement and advocacy. Lobbying, advocacy, those traditional civil society words. But then, how do citizens exercise their collective agency? Is usually through organized civil society, organized groups. And the civil society has emerged as the best vehicle through which citizens can exercise their collective agency. And therefore, once we have a civil society that is united by purpose, that is well coordinated, that are able to adopt common position and push for that position, then it enables social accountability. So those preconditions, of course, in addition to clear laws and policies as another enabler, where laws are not, they are clear, they are not vague, they provide for specifics. I think then it becomes possible for people to say, this is what the law says, why are you doing contrary to the law? This is what the policy has outlined, why are we not doing this? And so therefore, the linkage between the preconditions and the national values and the principles as outlined under Article 10 should be pretty obvious. And so and I think I will be sharing this more in detail in my next presentation.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Masese.
Thank you so much.
I want at this juncture, what you have referred to as preconditions, I want to bring along Stephen. In your experience in Vihiga County, to what extent is county government giving citizen information to enable them engage them in the issues of social accountability? What is the Vihiga experience in this area? Maybe you can share with us. Then I will also ask Samson later on what is the Kisumu experience as far as issue of public participation, because as Masasa puts it, there are preconditions if you are people fully engaged in social accountability. What is the Vihiga experience in access to information? Thank you.
Thank you, Moderator Wala. Kindly allow me just in 1 minute to input and make an addition to what Madam Wanjiru and Masese have rightly and strongly defined as far as social accountability is concerned. Just a little input is that social accountability is also anchored on the concept of social contract. The social contract, which requires the government to provide services, and not only services, but quality services, and the government to provide resources for those services. So these two makes it an essence that the citizenry have to undertake social accountability. And then going forward, as Masesa has already observed, or rather as it has been observed by Masesa and Wanjiru, there are those ingredients for social accountability. Definitely, access to information is very vital. Because if you go to the Constitution, which is anchoring social accountability, you find we are starting with the Article 1, which talks about the people who are the driver of social accountability. Then we have Article 10, which says these people have to participate. Then we have Article 35, which says these people have to participate but be informed. They get information.
Stephen, can you move to the
to be able to
tilt your computer? People are not seeing you well.
I'm seeing now. It's getting a little bit dark. The light is so bad. Are you seeing?
Things better, but you can move toward the right side.
So in Vihiga, the situation is a little bit not very, very encouraging. We are still grappling with a system of government that still believes in the usiri wa serikali, as it is rightly put. Let me use that word, serikali. So you are not easily accessible to that information. If you go in the Access to Information Act, it talks about proactive access to information, meaning the government has to provide information freely and without being probed. It even requires there must be an officer in charge of information who can always give that information very clearly. So we find that the government in Vihiga and the Western region at large have not adopted and have not opened up to realizing proactive provision of information to the citizenry. And further to that, the citizenry are challenged in that the government in Vihiga and the Western at large have adopted the digital way of providing information to the citizen. Selective information, that's what I want to say. And this one is posted on the government's website. When you look at social accountability being a people-driven.
Can I just can I interfere with you a bit? We need to see your shoulder. Could you also move a bit from the light? Just tilt on your right or left. No, the other side.
Okay.
The other side. Just make sure you escape your light. We want to escape your light. Yeah, they are good.
Okay?
So you can, yeah, that's fine. That's better.
Okay. So I was saying, besides the challenge of the government being reluctant to give information and fitting into the definition in the act, the proactive provision of information. The second challenge is that you find the government now resorts to giving information in a digital manner, which is in the sense to the web, to the government web. Now, when we look at social accountability being a movement by the people, and precisely below the social scheme, you find that it becomes a tricky business because of lack of capacity to deal in digital access. That is an experience we are having in the Viga and Western region at large.
Thanks a lot, Samson.
Yeah.
Can you bring up to speed? What's your experience in public participation in regard to Kisumu County?
Thank you, Mr. Chris. Just like democracy, social accountability is a process. It's not a sprint. So in Kisumu County, our experience has been
Poor network.
Kisumu County, my experience has been minded CSOs come together. They have more impact on addressing the issues of the community. Just recently, are you getting me?
Proceed.
Hello. Yeah,
Proceed.
just recently, yeah, for example, just recently, we had an engagement with the county government of Kisumu through the Chief Officer of Environment and the Departmental Committee of Environment.
Wow.
Issues of us within Kisumu County, wildlife conflict that was organized by Magnum, and we had a fruitful engagement. And it is worthy to note that payment was being processed. Then another.
Samson, can you internet? Maybe
that social accountability needs sustainability. Issue of sustainability is realized. Then another thing worth noting is that county governments are not
Samson, can we pick somebody then as we fix your internet? Samson?
When you inquire on
Samson.
Yeah.
Let's try.
I'm getting you.
Try your internet a bit so that we bring on somebody on the board because of time. Just try your internet, then as we bring somebody on board so that we don't waste more time. We were losing you most of the time.
Okay.
Maybe Wanjiru, maybe and Masese, I want to look at in the light of clanism, in the light of tribalism, to what extent, or maybe at the county level, to what extent is accountability work? What's the experience in maybe at the county level where dominant clans are and the other clans want to, if you are in power and the other clan is in power and you happen to be this side that you want to do accountability and the people in power at the other side, what are your experiences? Maybe Gikonyo said they have not engaged much at the county level, but I want to ask Paul that also worked in the county. What are your experiences here? Because it's also becoming a big challenge. And two, many times you realize that the county are not following the law. What can civil society do to make sure we adhere to this constitution? Thank
you. Thank you, Chris. But as far as now, I want to say that it's not that TISA is just based in Nairobi. Eh? I think Wanjiru did allude to the fact that there is a lot we do together. The Institute for Social Accountability and Center for Enhancing Democracy and Good Governance. And our other partners under the Social Accountability Learning Group, previously called Social Audit Learning Group. So the question really, Wanjiro can say as much as I would. But then to start off is that you've mentioned two critical impediments to social accountability work and generally to the exercise of civilian oversight and the sovereign powers of the people. The cronyism, tribalism, we call them generally negative ethnicity. And this has been a huge problem, not only to the initiatives we undertake, social accountability initiatives, but also even when it comes to election of leaders. And I do not want to divorce elections and social accountability, because part of what we consider social accountability is what we call social vetting, which is a process through which citizens vet candidates for various electoral positions. I think what negative ethnicity does is that it affects two of the critical preconditions that I mentioned. One of them is it disorganizes the citizens, because citizens now begin speaking from the points of view of their clans, and that has also appearing on civil society, because then we begin to see civil society taking certain positions that are acceptable to their clans, or the positions held by their clans. The net effect of that is that it becomes so easy now for government and politicians to disorganize both citizens and the civil society, because we are always reminded that whatever we do as a government is going to be endangered if we do not speak as a clan. And I think, if anything, Siaya, Chris, if you can allow me, is known for this. I've worked in Siaya and I know, and we've seen a lot of this in counties like Baringo, where we have the highlands and the lowlands. We have sharply divided ethnic communities. So that's the impact, that's the effect that clanism and tribalism, negative ethnicity generally means. Even for us here in Nakuru, Nakuru, as we know, is the face of Kenya. We have all communities living here in Nakuru. So when people like myself keep pushing for accountability in budget implementation, transparency, and so on, often it has assumed an ethnic angle. And twice or three times nimetumiwa wazee, to come and talk to me in my language, so that I do not jeopardize their chance to get the cut of the cake from the county. So what civil society can do, I think, and particularly when it comes to non-implementation of laws and policies, Chris, our work is clear cut. That's the essence of social accountability: to ask questions, to seek answers, to provide evidence that things are not being done properly, and use all means necessary to write them up, including what Shiro called public interest litigation and strategic interest litigation. So, but in order for civil society to be able to do so, and this is now the gist of social accountability, we must have been in a position to collect enough information, adequate data, or evidence that is credible, that is reliable, so that when you are saying this law is being violated, or this policy is being violated, is not an opinion you are profiling, but you are being very specific and you've got enough evidence and support. The other bit is when I talked about informed citizenry, we've been talking about civic education. In social audit, we call it community organizing and sensitization. Indeed, it's the very first step. Now, this has to be thorough and in-depth, so that people begin to create linkage between what would happen if government continues in a state where it is not adhering to the laws and the policies. What does it mean to them and and their livelihoods?
Thanks,
So,
Masese.
yeah.
I think I want to bring Wanjiru, then I bring Mulemi, then I close this section by Sonditi, if there's no any other question. But in the chat, I'm seeing a question by one Infinix Hotline. I couldn't get the name. Is asking integrated county development plans, to what degree have they been implemented in the second phase? Also, they're asking crossfire between the executive and the county assembly. Very healthy, but how can it be moderated to productive to the county development? They're asking, yes, that engagement, crossfire between the executive and assembly, like what you have seen in Kirinyaga and maybe Embu, yes, it's cross-check for oversight, but to what extent can they be moderated to help in productive development at the county level? Wanjiru, I want to bring it on this, and also as you pick on it, look at, is devolution working? Thank you.
Yeah, these are not easy questions, but we must remember we are in a transition from authoritarian to a democratic type of governance, and transitions always have reversals. So the challenges we are facing are the continuation of the struggle. I think we thought we've got a constitution, we've got the laws, we expect compliance, but obviously not. So number one, what can we do is we need to, unfortunately, our work is very much donor dependent, and maybe, then you have short-term programs for a long-term process. So maybe it's time we got together and really revisit the funding of Function 14, get counties, get government to put money into public participation, social accountability. The struggle for the PBO remains valid. Talking to partners, development partners, this process needs sustained support. So we need to look at funding. We also need to look at who are the actors we are working with, because there are some actors who are very self-sustained at the local level, who don't require a lot to move. And for us, we found that working with maybe neighborhood associations, working with trade associations has a lot of value because they have means of income. And that is why I was also saying, if we can look at basic services and look at how can we organize social accountability so that it can pay for itself. So one of the problems I think is we've taken very much a rights-based is really important, but we took a minimalist rights-based approach without looking at the sustainability. So we need to really stand back and say, how do we sustain the local level of engagement? Who are these actors and where does this money come from, so that we can wean ourselves from donor dependency, especially now around COVID. We can expect there'll be less donor funding. So part of the conversation, in the long run. So part of the conversation with development partners is to ensure that part of that funding is to enable these kind of explorations and of opportunities for sustainability. I know institutions have been looking at social enterprise and other approaches, but maybe not doing it in a very dedicated way. I think it needs to be something we focus on. I think the last thing I would say is we need to get back to the conversation about the democratic transition and, join platforms to really decry what's happening so that we don't normalize the kind of violations that are going on. Unfortunately, what we've seen is the conduct of the national government has really shaped the conduct of the county governments, except where you have very strong county leadership. I think the national government set the bar at the bottom. So violation has become order of the day. Nonetheless, in our programs, we have to continue using petitions, access to information petitions, public interest litigation, be persistent so that we don't accept the violations. But we need to recognize that the situation we have is not ordinary. The level of violation is a reversal. And unfortunately, I think what has happened is we have maybe a little bit normalized it so that we are trying to program around it instead of saying, this is an extraordinary situation. We cannot afford in any way to say this is the conduct of Kenyans, because it's not. I think one, I know I've said last point, but what we are finding is what Masese said at the end as he was finishing, is this conscientization of citizens. We need to work with citizens. So as much as we are saying, let's look at our social accountability work and how it can be self-sustaining, also with citizens, we need to make them really that political education that we talk about has to be real. A lot of social accountability programs don't have the political education. You know, CGG might be doing political education alongside the technical, but there are very few civil society organizations still doing still doing the oversight accountability, very few working with the county assemblies, very few doing political education. So civil society has also moved out of the difficult areas. So there is a need to go back into those areas. Aligned to that is development partners have been tending towards a very technical approach where they assume government is going to work with us. So even development partners have been going into the easy areas, and we need to recognize the problem is in the hard areas. So I don't know if that's helpful, but we definitely need to rethink how we are doing social accountability and pick the lessons, because we already have lessons. We're already doing some good things. It's maybe re-emphasizing where do we put the stress.
Thanks a lot, Wanjiru. If I hear you well, I think we need to build more movement and engage also on political education as opposed to having a middle ground on civic education. Most of us, we say, we are doing civic education. But I think politicians are ahead of us. We also must do political education to get along with the current problems that we are facing as a nation. I realize that when you has raised critical issues, to what extent are we confronting hard questions either at the county assembly level or at the county executive level? We like having middle ground or having being friendly to the people in power at times. Or we look at donor engagement. Donors also want to be seen to be supportive of the government. So at times you are told don't confront, but at times if you don't confront, don't get a result. I think what is emerging here is how do we build social movement? How do we make sure that citizens are out of their slumber and taking the lead in social accountability? How do we sustain social accountability without donor funding? Then bring us to the question of social accountability, then what? Because yes, we do it. I want to bring Bulemi on board. Bulemi, after doing social accountability, then what, for example? What is the end game in this social accountability and behavior?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Walo. Allow me again, before proceeding to the question you raised, yes, also input. There was a question you asked about when the county governments violate the law. My experience is that the law is divided. There is the substantive part of the law and there's the procedural part of the law. What we normally deal with or what we normally concentrate on is the substantive part, and we forget the procedural. And this one has had the duty bearers taking advantage and therefore getting a window to escape to be held accountable. For example, the access to information. Yes, the substantive aspect is you are supposed to access information, but the how do you access that information? How do you do a letter request or a petition requesting for certain information? Whom do you serve and whom do you focus the petition onto? So what should we do? As a civil society, I believe we are supposed to come up with a mechanism to build capacity of the citizenry on the procedural aspect of the law as well as the substantive aspect of the law. The other aspect is the funding. Madam Wanjiru came out very clearly. The function 14 in Schedule 4 has been neglected by most duty bearers. If you look at most budgets, they tend to focus on the hardware side and not the software. So if we can also be able to engage and get to realize the software to get equal attention when the budgets are being prepared and for the funding to go on. So what next after the social accountability? After you have undertaken the social accountability, my perspective is that the citizenry and the civil societies should be able to use the lessons learned and the gains made to build forward strong democracies. Because democracy, as you all know, is not static. It keeps on changing with the times that exist, with the laws that are there. So once we score here or get this result here, the lessons that we have learned should be able to propel us to be able to build on it to realize the perfect goal that we are looking at for democracy. Chris?
Thanks, Bulemi. On Samson, I don't know whether you are there. Samson Onditi. Hello, Samson. Fine. If Samson is not there, I want to move to the next level of looking at the experience in Rift Valley and the other parts. But before then, I want to hear, you know, we will never get result without pain. Get result without pain. In social accountability, what are the kind of the pains that we need to endure for us to have the productives or get to track how our resources are used for our public good? Because we realize that a lot of resources, citizens are laid back. We stand to watch. We never know. We don't really relate with the taxes the way you are supposed to relate to the taxes. We feel that this is not our money. And in most of the question, the politician has made us believe that whenever development has occurred, it is because of them. And even if you look at the role of the MCAs, even look at the role of the MPs, they negate, if they go out, they say, I'm the one who brought this road. I'm the one who did this, so that citizens don't question more. I want to bring up to either, I don't know whether anyone who's ready can pick it up, but I really want to hear. Maybe if Samson is there, you could pick, then Bulemi, then I go back to Wanjiru, then Masese. But I want to hear, because many times, what is bringing this? So that if you look at when MCS are campaigning, they say, if you elect me, I'll give you this road. But again, we're looking at also the dichotomy and looking at how we are constructing our programs, such that when you want to bring people for a meeting, you must give them transport refund. When they go to politician meetings, they don't pay. They're not paid and they go. When people go to church, they don't pay and they still go to church. What can we do without paying people, which are times called bribing, to enable us build movement that are sustainable around social accountability? Maybe I'll start with Samson, then I come back to Moses, to Bulemi, then I go to Masese, then I conclude by Wanjiru. Is Samson there? Can we come to Stephen? It's like Samson not there. Stephen? Is Stephen there? Masese, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Just a minute. Are you getting me?
Yeah, come up. Yes.
Okay. My take is that the citizenry or the rights holders have been oriented politically. So
Stephen, I'll have to mute you because we can't get you.
You can't get me. Am I now being heard?
Yeah, better. Yeah, that's
Hello?
better.
That's better. Okay. Okay, I was saying the citizenry has been oriented to believe that in politics, there is this development in quotes, and development mean the physical infrastructure. So that's why every politician is falling over each other to show that he or she has brought development. We as the civil society have a big task, and that even builds the case for the civil society, to try and bring the distinction between the role of a politician, MCA, MP, and the executive. That is a tall order indeed, because this is what the citizenry has been fed on and has been oriented to believe, that a good politician is one who brings development. A development in quotes, that is physical infrastructure. So even when they're not supposed to implement, they will fall over each other. I had a case where somebody was quarreling, one MCA was quarreling with an executive committee member why he was not informed when they were going to launch a certain road. So is that the role of an MCA to go and launch the road? But he wants to make political capital out of it. So that's why I'm saying we have a tall order as CSOs to be able to unwind the citizenry from that kind of perception, to bring them to understand the role of the politician, that is the MCA, the MP, I mean, member of National Assembly, and the Senate. Thank you.
Stephen Masese, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Of course, I note we are still to come down to our CEDG's experience here in the lift, but then I would say that the situation you describe is actually changing. Yes, when politicians are campaigning, they do promise the electorate all manner of things. But I think we are observing that people are beginning to appreciate that different people or different politicians play different roles. And increasingly, Kenyans are beginning to appreciate that it's only a certain kind of politicians from whom they can expect delivery of certain promises. And that is thanks to the civic education, the conscientization work that civil society are doing. If I were to tell you, is that increasingly we are seeing people robustly engaging in the budget cycle. In Nakuru, where we are based, there is a lot of, citizen influencing of budget priorities, and they know that actually it's their role, it's their constitutional duty to inform their development agenda. So this can be used as a case study, but I think it might not be true that as people still fall prey into those promises. But then there's a bigger problem that, yes, there's a bigger problem that Wanjiru did allude to, and it's a problem we commonly refers to tyrant of numbers. That national government has taught county government bad manners. But these bad manners are all over the place because of this phenomenon we call tyrant of numbers. You are in a county like Nakuru, which is considered a Jubilee county. So the Big Four agenda, whether beneficial to the county and its residents, is what we are going to pursue through our resources. You are in a county that does not subscribe to the Jubilee ideology, so the Big Four agenda is rubbish. So therein we lose objectivity, and this is all because of our practice of politics. And the lesson we've picked as said Gigi is that often we do not concern ourselves with the political discourses, but we go down to what are people's concerns, what are people's development needs. And it's because of that that we have influenced the formation of citizen groups like citizen oversight forums, civil society organizations forum at the county level, livestock oversight committees in Baringo, where livestock farmers come together to reflect on what is it government needs to do to facilitate their livelihood as livestock keepers. So even when we identify the reality that people are more concerned with what brings bread to their table, then we surely relegate politics to the back burner. So I'm inclined to say that.
Masasa, I will want you to
yes,
just
Steve.
proceed with the experience of Rift Valley, because you're already into it.
Thank you so much, and I think if we look at the recent years, and we're talking about around the last 5 to 6 years, but primarily since 2013, 2010, 2011, we focused a lot of our program work on mobilizing citizens to influence development. And when we talk about development, is the whole cycle from identification of development needs, prioritization, all the way to implementation. And this is where captured in the public expenditure framework, variously called the budget cycle. And our work has been creating spaces for citizens first and foremost to consult on what their priorities are within their wards, within their locations. And our entry point to communities has been formations that we've aided in their formation. One being resident associations, neighborhood associations for peri-urban and rural areas, as well as citizen oversight forums, including sector-specific citizen collectives. And then when they consult and agree that for this budget year, this is what is going to constitute our priorities, they develop memoranda, which memoranda they share through the government-led spaces like the budget public hearings and other spaces, including annual development plans and other important processes within the budget cycle. Once approved, that's during formulation. During approval, we support the same groups to engage with the county assembly, mainly through the finance committees, and then that engagement is what delivers the approved budgets, which then we apply the social accountability tools on. The same groups we engage through the formulation process are the ones we move with to apply social accountability tools to influence implementation. So among the tools that we have used include social audits, citizen report cards, community scorecards, public expenditure tracking surveys, and participatory budget analysis. All these tools are applied interchangeably and based on what communities have identified as a gap in implementation. And the result of this is that we now have very, very strong community formations in the form of resident associations. I'll give the example of Nakuru. For example, we have seen residents and neighborhood associations for the last 3 years determining almost to the last bit where their monies go. We have a very strong resident association here called Rokora, that is Rwanda Community Resident Association, that has engaged government to rehabilitate a quarry that had either to been abandoned, and it's now land available, and the money has been allocated for construction of a ward resource center that is going to double up as the ward headquarters, and also plans are underway to allocate resources for construction of a polytechnic. These are people who had struggled to engage the owners of this quarry to rehabilitate it because it had become a death den. This is where people were killing each other, where rape was occurring, and so on and so forth. But you see, through the resident association, it has been turned into something that's going to serve the interest of the community. In counties like Baringo, for example, our social accountability work has strengthened the relationship between civil society and the county government. During this COVID pandemic, many counties did not hold public hearings for the budget for the financial year 2020-2021. But in Baringo County Civil Society Forum, where ZTG is a convener, engaged both the executive and the assembly through virtual meetings, to the extent that we had what we call a budget day with the County Assembly Budget and Appropriations Committee to explain our submissions in a written memoranda that we had made. And from the report of the committee, up to 40% of our submissions have been adopted. What does that tell you? Is that by organizing civil society, by emphasizing the need for objective engagement, some mutual respect has developed between the politicians and the civil society, and we are now able to engage through formal and informal spaces, and that's how we influence where money goes to counties. And then it becomes easy now for Baringo Civil Society Forum to engage the county assembly when it comes to budget oversight. When it comes to implementing the priorities that have been taken up in the budget, it is to engage the assembly because we did this together, we worked this together.
Two more minutes.
Thank you. I really would wish to wrap it up, and I think the fact that the assembly now is willing to listen to what the citizens are raising. We have individuals we call budget champions. These budget champions are drawn from the civilian oversight forums, who are trained budget facilitators. They are the ones who mobilize residents to design priorities and to engage. And the net effect of this is that every time government seeks, like when the budget cycle begins, the budget champions are the first ones to be called up to. All this has not been without challenge, Chris and colleagues. There have been challenges. But why I keep saying that we are making steps in the right direction is that, one, we are narrowing the gap between the politicians and the government and the people. Two, we are instilling confidence in the people that actually they are the ones to drive the development agenda and the accountability agenda. So the other challenges when it comes to asking the hard questions and sometimes government starting to backtrack are easy to deal with when in principle we've appreciated the value of this kind of engagement. Perhaps you will paraphrase the question being raised by Ira Romondi.
I wanted to raise that, but pick it up, please. Pick it up.
What is your experience in Nakuru with feedback from duty bearers on the actions taken by citizens, including monitoring budget performance and county government expenditures? This is key as it has influence on citizen-led accountability. I think if I get Irari well, is asking whether or not responses from government or actions from government prompt or sustain the momentum and the desire for citizens to continue engaging. That's true. Anytime people have submitted their memoranda or profile their opinions about government performance, if they do not see a reciprocating change in behavior on the part of government, that's what breeds apathy. So one way of sustaining civilian engagement or citizen engagement is by ensuring that government is responsive. So how do you make government responsive? One is by creating spaces through which people can engage directly with government. And in our counties, we've modeled a platform we call the Governor's Roundtable with civil society, where the governor and his team meets civil society organizations periodically. For the case of Nakuru, is even spelled out in our MOU with the Nakuru Civil Society Forum and the government of Nakuru that we should be meeting biannually. Baringo, we are again to meet biannually. But of course, COVID has interfered with this calendar. But once we meet, we take to this platform all issues being raised from the locations to the ward. And we do this through civil society forums are organized into thematic groups that are modeled around the sector working groups. So each thematic group makes a presentation on observations and gives feedback, and then government responds. A lot of this has informed development within sectors. For example, if I were to tell you, Paringo as an example, we have seen this year budget, a lot of money will be going towards operationalizing projects that have either to remained, dormant. Dispensaries that were built long time ago but had not been equipped, had not been staffed. Water boreholes that had been drilled but had not been equipped, piping had not been done, and therefore water was not reaching homesteads. But through this engagement, government adopts, and then we move from one level to another, and that's what motivates the citizens and prompts them to keep engaging.
Thanks,
But
Moses.
this must be deliberate and sustained.
Thanks a lot. I want to bring Wanjiro up to speed here. And there's a question raised by one of the Namusule. I think if I get her right or him right, it's trying to say that, yes, yeah. Looking at it, the money is the money is coming.
Sorry, Chris. Namsule is the executive director for Ford Kenya. So I just needed to make that clarification.
Okay, that's great. They asking that the question that the money coming to the county, a lot of money. There's also money, both national and county government, and there seem not to be any change at the village level. Poverty is on the rise. I would want to tie this by asking Wanjiro that one of the objectives of why we do social accountability to reduce corruption is also to improve quality services, make sure that the citizen get the quality services, and also to make the citizen engage with their government. And also, if you tie the question that yes, there's a lot of resources and the poverty level is on the rise, what could be the problem? Or are we doing social accountability wrong, or are we not touching the right battles so that we fight graft, we bring we increase, we make sure the service delivery is improved, and also we reduce the divide between the government and the people. What could be the problem as far as how we are doing the social accountability? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And what I'd say is that, first of all, if you look at government statistics, there has been some small level of improvement in poverty statistics, service delivery reach. There have been some reversals in some small aspects, especially around health and vaccinations, some of these sensitive areas flagged, but then picked up again. So there was a public expenditure report done in 2017 that gives a positive case for our counties, despite the corruption, because the corruption is there. And despite the fact that really counties are not getting the financial support they need, and there are capacity challenges. So despite that, I wouldn't say zero. I think it's not exponential, but yes, there is some improvements there, and it depends on where you're from. So I think if we look across the board, there are parts of the country that didn't have tarmac roads, that didn't have health facilities, so at a basic level, we have seen the effect of these funds going down. But like we said, we have a governance problem. And this problem persists because if you look at the Auditor General report, we are not seeing a significant improvement in the utilization of funds. We've seen a few counties really become, getting very good Auditor General findings, but then we have others that do the public participation, do the budget engagement, but when you look at their statistics, their indicators are still not positive. Are we doing social accountability correctly? I don't think the problem is civil society alone. I think our programs are not designed in a way that is responding to the magnitude of our problem, of this political capture, because the programs are fragmented. So, you know, a lot of civil society will get funding for a year, 2 years. If you don't have, you know, if you have many civil society doing many small programs in many places, then obviously you're not going to have that impact. And that's really from the funding level. So what do we do? Do we get discouraged? Do we say, you know, it's not working? I think, as Masese is telling us, he's told us all these steps, but if you look at their trajectory, the learning, the implementation, the engaging, building relationships takes time. You might need to work with a community for some 5 years. By the time they trust you, by the time you identify these issues, you go, and you know, you go forward and you go backwards. So there's a problem of design of program. There is a problem of maybe the scope of support is not in line with the magnitude of the problem. But then also we are working in you know, we lost an opportunity in 2003 to fight, really, to take a stand against corruption. And my feeling really is that our funders have not woken up to this reality. And maybe as civil society, it's our responsibility to tell them that, yeah, it's fine, we can do social accountability work, but we must work on the political problem. And whether it's the political education and the kind of civic advocacy, activism that we need to really highlight that we can't keep losing 40% of the budget, because we are losing a lot of money. And so much as we are doing good work and citizens are engaging, the commensurate effort is very small. It's not exponential, as Namusule is saying. So we need to, I think a platform like this is useful for us to say, this is working, we have good practices, but we need to respond to the bigger problem. We have a political problem. Our citizens are readily co-opted. For us to work with citizens so that they can stand firm, we need to say, how do we get to that point where citizens are driving the process? How do we deal with this political culture of citizens you can work with? Come election, they vote in people who, when you look at the people they voted, you wonder what happened to all the education that we did. So how do we connect elections with what happens in between? Because citizens still aren't making that connection. And you know, there are a few places where they are, but in majority of the places they are not. So I think we need a reflection. That is my view. So we are doing good work as civil society. It could be done better. Funding programs need to be relooked at, and then our overall scope of engagement needs to be looked at.
Maybe, while still there, looking at what Paul said at the beginning, that you guys started with the social accountability around CDF. I remember it was CDF, then we went to Latif, people came to Rural Identification Fund, we started engaging there. Now that we have a lot of resources at the county, the focus is only at the county government. No one is watching CDF to the extent that we have rogue MPs, nothing is happening. What can we do so that we don't seem to lose focus and see only county resources as the only resources that we need to oversight? Also, Hilary has asked a question here, which I want to paraphrase. You realize that many counties, MCAs are tenderpreneurs. And by design of the constitution, they're supposed to be providing oversight. So what can we do to oversight?
Is it me alone, or the rest of us cannot get Chris?
He's perfectly clear. It's you. Maybe your headphones are interfering.
Sorry. Okay, thanks.
You're looking at where you realize that accountability, even if you look at the general report, the structure of the report is that we will discuss audit report. And realize the PAC committee, which discussed the report, never discuss what goes into the assembly, but they focus on what goes to the executive. What can we do differently so that can we change the law when there's a provision now for referendum? Can we look at some things that we can also will make social accountability easier or better for us? Maybe Wanjiru, before you conclude on that.
Wow. You've asked many questions and I'm not sure my thoughts are that well structured. So I'll just answer as it comes. First of all, civil society are not engaging with county assemblies. Very few are. There are some that are doing that. But a lot of civil society and funding partners have moved away from that, kind of hard oversight. Maybe because of how difficult it is. So as we seem to be reinforcing the thinking that we don't trust our politicians, so we don't want to engage with them. We don't believe we'll get good results there. So county assemblies are getting a very free rein. And this also happens at the national level. So one, we need to go back into that space. But yes, I agree we have some structural problems, but my personal view is I don't support the proposed referendum change. Of course, we are waiting to see what the bill will look like, but there's nothing that was in that BBI report that was answering the questions that we are addressing. They had put some small things that are really nice, like the vetting of political leaders, fantastic. But if you look at the spirit and the proposals of the BBI, you will see they didn't talk about how to strengthen devolution. They put this increase of money, but then they have other provisions that directly contradict that. So the BBI is very dangerous because if you look at the sum effect of the proposals, it would weaken our sovereignty, it would weaken self-governance. It doesn't deal with part of the problem we have with our public participation and our exercise of Article 1 is all our processes end up with the legislature. So if you have a petition, it must be approved and determined and finally effected by the legislature. If you have referendum, the referendum goes all the way through, but it comes back to the legislature. So really our constitution denied us the real expression of Article 1. So what we need is a citizen petition where we deal with the things that are paining us. So I would say what we've lost is we've been very involved in our projects and programs, and we are not engaging with the politics that's happening in the country. And we need to get back into that politics and just identify a few things, like what you're saying, this thing of state officers. Of course, what they're doing is illegal. A county MCA should not be doing tenders, but under the, especially because they are state officers. But we need to look at how do we strengthen, which small provisions can we push for as a citizen agenda so that we can seal those loopholes. So really, we need to recognize we've come a long way. But I think also we had this idea that we can do bottom-up transformation by implementing social accountability projects. That is not working with this kind of administration. And we need to sit back and say, okay, now we are on a back foot. We've lost ground. How do we regain this ground? Continue the programs we are doing, but go back into driving the national narrative. So that, because social accountability is important, but without the linkage to the national, it becomes a treadmill where you're not making progress. Last thing is, we haven't managed to engage citizens to the national processes. So that there are very important conversations that take place that should have citizen engagement, whether it's organized groups or whoever, like division of revenue, sharing of revenue, debt conversations. And these conversations are then affecting the ability of counties to respond, because the money is stuck, like CDF money, parastatal money. There are so many parallel funding mechanisms that are eating up the money that should be going into service delivery. So is devolution working? Devolution has data shows just sending the money to the ground, even with very corrupt, a lot of corruption cartels, just sending the money to the local level away from the central government has had a benefit, right? But it is not the transformation we desired. So we need to get back. You see, last time the civil society pushed for a national dialogue, and civil society set the agenda. We must do that again, because our politicians' agenda is about their interests.
I think the issue of national dialogue is very important, but as we do national dialogue, we also need to push county dialogue and see, for example, the Kisumu we want, the Siaya we want, the Baringo we want, the Nakuru we want.
Agreed.
We must be able to be in the front line to write history. I think that's what civil society is not doing best. So I want to bring Mulemi Stephen. Are you still there? Stephen?
Yes, I'm still there. Are you hearing me?
I am getting you. Please share with us. You know, we have been looking at the social accountability, looking at these issues, emerging the tools, looking at the experiences from where you sit, maybe in the 5 minutes or so. What is the Vihiga CI experience from your engagement with the Conrad? What can you share with us?
Are you getting me?
Please proceed. We are not seeing your picture, but we are getting you.
Thank you, thank you. The Vihiga CI experience is still, I would describe it, is still picking up. As Elizabeth Wanjiro observed, we had a very good experience with the results from Nakuru, and that is Masese. And it could be because of the long term of engaging the public there that has realized that. For us in Vihiga, and it's now we are starting to come up. So we have just had to do a few things for the last 1 or 2 years with the Conrad, and we are now in the process of trying to push, trying to panel beat and see to it that we are getting a result. We are using actually the social audit tool, and we were focusing on the health sector. We've gathered the information required, and we've come up with the recommendations, and we've shared, and we've been waiting and waiting for the response, but the leadership of Vihiga has not come out clearly to engage with us. Probably we would need to then organize some other platforms, some other tools to see to it that we bridge the gap between the rights holders and the duty bearers. And I like your suggestion, the two of them, that is a civil society roundtable with the governor and a county dialogue forum that will enable us bridge this gap so that we are able to see both the citizenry and the county government appreciate the concept of social accountability as part of the instruments that will lead to progress and development in our county. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. That's the study, Strengthening Local Health Sector Governance, done by Conrad and Sumu, Siaya, and Vihiga. Adoga, will you be able to share that report thereafter? Edwin?
Sure, why not? Yeah, sure.
So this is what Conrad is doing. And I think Edwin will share with us so that we could also learn from it. Right, again, we as Wanjiru have slightly observed, it is very difficult to do social accountability for 3 months, 6 months programs. I think one of the biggest problem we are facing is that civil society, we at times do anchor our program like firefighting in the area of the social accountability. I think we need to be more grounded. We need to be the process needs to be more community led. And from what experience we are getting here is that if the citizens are in the front line, they'll be more likely to get more result, better result. And I think if the government also appreciate that when we do social accountability, we are merely helping them achieve the objective, and they don't see it as a witch hunt, we also might be able to get more results. So I think from what we are gathering here is that this engagement need to be more, to be ongoing. And I think today we were looking at it from inward perspective, and we also need to, in the near future, also look at how do we also engage beyond the borders, and also how do we bring different players. And again, there's also this narrative that we speak civil society and the government. I tend to think we also need to bring back here the market, the traders, the business community. That's where the corruption is. They're the people, that's where the money is. So I think this engagement that yes, we civil society, we speak and we speak with the government without bringing these people, I think there's also a missing gap. And I also think that Wanjiru and the teams, that is there a way how we can partner deeply with the Office of the Auditor General, also to instigate forensic audit where possible, also to do value for money audit, so that when we do civic engagement, and he's telling me, showing me a bag that there's already an engagement, which is a good thing, but that engagement needs to go beyond Nakuru. Matt goes beyond even the Rift Valley, even the part of Nyanza, so that we can complete the audit cycle or the budget process cycle. You realize most of the committee budget or the committee at the county level, they rarely complete the budget cycle. When you reach the level of audit, it stops there. So I think most of the county also not put in place what we call the audit committees, or if they are put in place, how are they put in place? You see, when you want to put auditors, you recruit them and they're supposed to answer to you. I think there are lots of things that, as Wanjiru rightly observed, there are gaps that we still need to fill. And I think even if you look at now the newly amended the County Government Act, that the governor can easily fire a CC. I think one of those are the things that are weakening the institution, because that means a CC will not be able to operate fully. So I think as we nearing finalizing this debate, I want just to hear from all of us, what do you think could be the best way on moving forward with the issue of social accountability in this context, so that we don't just speak like going around in circles, but we can even have 2 or 3 strong way forward that we can build on and see, yes, this, if you do this and this, then we'll be able to help this country, and we'll be able to build more movement, and we'll be able to have a more robust civil society. Because we are all aware that people who have been in this sector, there is weak or non-existent framework at an umbrella body that brings civil society together. That's also providing a gap or a weakness that we also, as we move forward, we need to work on. Then how do we also strengthen all counties network, so that we don't approach this process as individual institution, but we approach it as a movement, we approach it as a network, so that the result that we get does not become SIAG, does not become TISA, does not become Masseses or CGD or CONRAD, but it can become a collective result that we can all be proud of. To me, that's what I can say. But I want to start by, I don't know whether Samson is there.
I'm there.
Samson, we start with you. 2 minutes, please.
Oh, okay, thank you, Mr. Chris. As a way forward, I would propose that counties form consortiums of CSO, of like-minded CSOs, to enable them push forward the agenda of the community on issues of social accountability. Then number two, they should learn as a case study of counties that have succeeded.
Samson, your network is horrible. Can we pick Bulemi? Steve?
Yeah. Are you getting me?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, my take home is as follows. We need to find out how we can get the proactive activeness of the citizenship. I'm aware there are some counties that are already engaged and have built organizations working around social accountabilities. We need to build further the capacity of those organizations that are already formed, and we will come up with the networks at the county level. And those ones that have not yet gotten there, we need to find a way of bringing it up to speed with the rest. And that will work very well, as you already observed the moderator, Wala, that we need to have a coalition of these civil societies, probably at the national level, working specifically on the issues of social accountabilities, which can then bring the force and the energy down to the counties and to the lower levels of devolution. Two, it is very paramount we change the attitudes of both government and the citizenry to come to the alignment that the citizenry are carrying out the social accountability for the benefit or for the realization of the objectives of government. Once that kind of mindset is been institutionalized, then it will enable us realize the synergy between the civil societies and the government, both at the national and the county levels. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. As Masese, you are parting shot on this.
Thanks so much. I think the country today is faced with a myriad challenges. Civil society has a very big responsibility to be part of the solution to those challenges. It's true that we've been weakened over the years, but I think we have an opportunity to dust ourselves and rise to the occasion. There are a number of things that require national level focus, and therefore the synergy between national and county-based civil society is important. And I think there are very good partnerships that can be cited. So one of the things I would wish to see is a deliberate effort on the part of civil societies to coalesce around issues. Wanjiro and TISA already started a campaign on debt, and that's one issue that I think should unite us now. We are talking about constitutional review, the proposed PPI referendum. I think that is an agenda that should unify us. What I showed you about the Citizen Accountability Project that was initiated by the former Auditor General, and I think I need to be clear. That was a brainchild of Mr. Oko. Ever since he stepped out of office, it's not a discussion that we've had. All I have to show is this bag. So I think revitalizing that debate is important. The linkage between public oversight institutions and civilian oversight initiatives. And this can only happen if we find a formula that can establish a united national civil society front. And Shiro, because we've been together in this for the longest, I think really we cannot shy away from this. We cannot give up on this country. I think now more than ever before, we really need to give our best to save this country. So whatever little we are doing in our small cocoons, let's find a way of joining it at some point. And
Thanks a lot,
thank you,
Mrs.
Conrad. I must say this to Conrad, Chris. This to Conrad is important because for 4 years we partnered with Conrad with funding from the European Commission and running projects in 4 counties here in the Rift Valley. Most of what I said, I shared as the changes we are seeing are changes occasioned by that partnership.
Okay.
So we'd urge Conrad particularly to reflect on the input from Shiro about focusing funding to social accountability initiatives. One, it should be long-term, it should be spread out, and then it should be consistent and focused on a specific issue. Thank you so much. Sorry for taking longer than.
Thanks a lot, Masese. Indeed, is very passionate to all of us, but I want to bring this to doorstep of Wanjiro. What could be your parting stuff? I think Masese has said many good things towards your part. Please give us your parting shot. Are you?
Sorry.
Okay.
He said many good things, and in fact stole the thunder. And the direction I'm hearing from everyone on who's the panel is towards coming together. I would say I agree. We need to revive the partnership, a partnership that will recognize we are at a time, at a critical time, where we need to safeguard our gains. So number one, we need to correctly call out the context that we are in, that we need to save devolution because the actions that have been taken are killing, especially for us who are looking at it from the national level. We might be a lot more discouraged than those at the county level because of what we are seeing. So number one, we have to state that problem. Then we have to get a partnership that is more strategic, because one of the things with civil society is we have a lot of passion, and sometimes we're even on the right side, but we are not that strategic. So when we come together in coalitions, we really tire ourselves out because we duplicate, we compete, and all of that. So I would pray that we get a very strategic one that can look at who's going to do the political education, who are those actors, who are going to continue this county level education, who is going to do the round table, so that we can do an effective division of labor and resources. And then we don't have to be in each and every county to start with if that's a problem, but we definitely need to have a national overview. So if Conrad is really thinking about supporting this kind of partnership, I think it will require us as civil society to first sit and say, what does this look like? Is this another project, or is this something that we can really organize in a way that will bring on board other development partners and put civil society in the driving seat of that partnership? So I agree, we do need a partnership. We do need to keep the focus on social accountability, but also recognize that beyond social accountability is the political accountability. And we need to speak to that in order to save this. And for that, I think if we organize ourselves more strategically, we can. Last point is, somebody told during the Danida study, one of the observations that was made is that as civil society, we are not very good at our political communication. And you might find if we sit as a partnership, maybe the first thing we need to do is to work on political communication. How do we get our message out there? Because politicians are very good at this. So we have the right, we are fighting for constitution, we are doing the hard work, we are working with citizens, but when it comes to communication, we are not as effective. So I would say we need to be more strategic and more effective in how we do our partnerships and our communication.
Thanks a lot, Wanjiru. Thanks a lot, Wanjiru. I think what we are getting is that we need to safeguard our gains and get more what unite us than what divide us, for us to achieve a better result and for us to get more grounded in the issue of social accountability. And we also need to design more programs that are long lasting, and we have to get citizen and civil society in the driving seat so that the longevity of the process can give us what we desire. I think I'll stop there and invite Edwin for closing remarks. It's almost 8. Thank you. Thank you all for giving me easy time to moderate this.
Thank you, Chris, for the wonderful moderation. Thanks, the panelists, for the insights. I'm telling you, there's a lot that you tend to learn. I think if I was in class, I would be asking, doing exams, I would be asking for an extra booklet, when you feel, and people would tend to wonder what is it that you're writing. But I would say very interesting pointers, very interesting ideas that I could always pick, and of course continue to find convergence, and of course my responsibility in the foundation is always to pick up interesting ideas and also share with my colleagues and advise them and see whether some of these things would work. I hope that I would continue to do that also with the conversations that we've just had today. I know social accountability is not endearing. I mean, like, if you, it sounds not the ordinary cup of tea that a lot of people take, and it's not that easy subject that people would seem attracted towards, and I'm waiting to see. But it's one of, I would say, the main components that make public participation and citizen oversight, actually important, because then you provide evidence and you can always be able to use this evidence to lobby and to advocate for certain stands and so forth. I just want to touch base on a few things that have been mentioned. Of course, I understand that when it comes to matters to do with social accountability and longevity of the interventions that we want to do together, they best play when you have a project and when we come together and implement some of these things for quite some time. One-off tends to scare or tends to diminish people's cooperation and their commitment. And I would just say that would continue this one-off conversations as we look for opportunities out there. Of course, Masese alluded to the fact that we did an EU project, and we also tried again, and we'll continue trying until we get another project that we could call fund together with EU, just to make sure that we implement together with you partners. I also get the opportunity to know some of you partners and what you do, and quite interesting ideas I've been able to gather. Of course, Wanjiru talked about also something very interesting, and talked about political education and how political education converges together with social audit, social accountability, how the two tend to inform each other. Quite interesting, and I think it lays the basis for, if you're to do a consortium, you bring different ideas and different strengths together, context together, and I believe that also these are things that would want to engage as we move forward. I would want to say that from CASP perspective, of course, there are quite a number of things that at the national level that the likes of TISA and all these other organizations would want to engage around on matters to do with social accountability. If you think that these are things that Conrad would find also interesting, always just share with us the ideas, and we'll see how we could come together and support each other. At the county level, of course, you're allowed. SIAG, CGG would continue just finding a way to better some of these engagements together. Then we're moving, and I try to be as practical as possible. So we try to move away from trainings. Of course, we consolidate a lot of ideas around training, but the book that I showed, or the small report that I showed of social accountability around the health sector governance, was an attempt by the local organization like LACOT, led by Onditi, and also Vixon, led by Bulemi. Not to do an exemplary work, but to start from somewhere and learn from the experience that we gathered. And it's a book that carries the experience and carries a bit of, I would say, novice attributes towards, working on matters to do with social accountability. And I think this is the way to go, because then if you talk about the market, the business communities, if you talk about broadening the scope, just to include each and every person who pays taxes and they want to see things being accounted for, I think then the small organizations at the grassroots level should be empowered slowly to actually carry some of these things out. And that is what I hold in Conrad as my belief. And I would want to see a lot of organizations being able to bring out these reports and using these reports to have a number of conversations in their own respect, and some of us coming in to learn and to get the insights of what really happens. A lot of these things are very interesting. So I'm looking forward, and we can always have this conversation. We have TISA, we have CGG, that you can always build ideas and see what opportunities lay for us up front, and pick these opportunities and run away with. I understand that not all organizations would come together and hold, and hold the common ambition or the common agenda that some of us subscribe to. But of course, then we still have the other approach that Masese talked about, consortium. Say, why don't you just bring also organizations that we feel would work together just to promote our common interests? And I think that is the way to go. And if we can be able to sell that point, I believe other organizations will be able to join in. That is the only way to go. And thanks very much. On behalf of CAS, I would extend our appreciation for staying this late, hoping to engage further. We'll be calling upon some of your services and some of your expertise in other fields, especially on matters to do with social accountability. If you hear, Wanjiru, if you get a call from us, please, we can be stubborn, we can be stubborn, but I know you will take your time to listen to what we have to say, and also for us to advise each other on these issues. So thank you very much. I would say that we've come to the end of this. I haven't exhausted the points that have been raised. I'll find a way to do that and share with the rest of us. Thank you very much. So I would say that this is the end of the meeting, and mbaki salama, ama mlale salama. Asanteni. Okay, bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Good evening.
Good night.
Good night. Asante.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, moderator, for great work.
Oh, welcome. Thanks.